Hello. All right. I don't know if you know this, if someone spilled the beans, but we are working towards headstand. I'm going to show you traditional headstand and tripod headstand. Now, there's a couple things I want to say first before we actually move into the little breakdown and try it. First of all, before you try it, please make sure that you're nice and warm and you did the conditioning class with Emily already. Please do not try this from cold because it won't work. It won't be successful. What I do want to say when it comes to these inversions is, or any complex shape, I know that it's scary to get upside down. I've been there. It's taken me many years to get to a place where I'm quite confident inverted. And there's even some positions where I'm not as confident in. So I understand the fear. However, trust that if you need to fall, your body will know how to keep you safe as you fall. The best thing that you can do, I know this sounds really obvious, is if you're going to fall, just bring your feet back down. Don't try to flip over. Don't try to save yourself and go off to the side. Just bring your feet back down. I'm going to demonstrate everything away from the wall, but if you want to try this, you can move yourself so you're right up at the wall, so that when we come into this, your hands are actually right up against the wall, okay? So that can also help to just get that feeling of being upside down and having that support there, so that over time you might be able to overcome that fear of falling. And then when you're really comfortable and confident with the shape, and you know what it's like to hang out upside down, then you can start to move away from the wall if that feels best for you. So don't be afraid of falling. I understand that fear, it's reasonable, but just trust. And also I trust that you will be taking responsibility for yourself right now. We're going to be approaching this in a really slow and controlled way with lots of different stops. So you need to decide where your threshold is and where you're going to stay today, and then keep revisiting this and see how you grow with time. Don't try to go somewhere where you're not ready, and you'll feel it. You'll feel if you're ready to keep going and get upside down, or if this is where you need to stop. One of the things I do want to mention that might be helpful for this and for the rest of your practice is that oftentimes with these complex shape, whether it's an inversion or arm balance or whatever, what really matters almost as much as the shape itself is how you approach the shape. There's some ways of getting into, say, tripod headstand, which you will see, I'll demonstrate, where I can't get into it that way because my hamstrings don't have the space and the length for me to be able to get into it like that. But I can get into it quite easily in a different way. So one of the things you want to keep in mind is that there's different ways to approach these postures, and some ways might really work for you and some might not at all. So just because it doesn't work for you the way I'm showing it to you doesn't mean that, there aren't other ways that you can try to access these shapes, okay? So in order to come into headstand, one of the things that I think doesn't get enough credit or mentioned enough is that you really do need open hamstrings for this. I'm going to show you a couple ways, as I already said, to get into this with more bent knees. But if you are going to try this with me now, make sure that you've warmed up with Emily and that you do have nice open hamstrings as you approach this. So the first one that we're going to go over here is just that more traditional headstand, okay? So what you're going to do is make sure that your elbows, are shoulder width, and then you're going to interlace your hands. One of the things that was such a game changer for me, I don't know who taught this to me, or else I would credit them, is to release your pinkies so that the base is solid, okay? So that you're not maybe rolling over your knuckle of your pinky there. The other thing to just watch out for, I'm used to doing headstand with this watch, but if you do have anything clunky that's going to affect your base, obviously just take that off. So what I'm going to do is interlace my hands. I'm going to release my pinkies. You can try that and see if that helps. And then just make sure that your elbows are staying shoulder width and that they're not flaring out towards the side. Okay, so that's the arm placement. The other thing that you want to watch out for is that you have the correct head placement. So it's not forward on your forehead and it's not back here. It's right smack on the crown of your head, right at the top of your head there, okay? So that's one thing that you really want to watch out for, because if we're not in correct alignment and then we're bringing our weight onto our head, your body will know to come on out of it, but we don't want to risk that. So just make sure that you're right on the crown of your head and in a nice solid alignment. So what I'm going to do is I'll interlace my hands, release the pinkies, and then I'm going to place the heels of my palms, so it's not like this, it's heels of the palms together, and that's going to go right up against my head, and then the crown of my head is going to be on the floor. The way that we're going to get into this, as I already said, is really slow and controlled. I very rarely, there aren't many things in yoga that I say do not do this. One of the things I will say do not do is to kick up into headstand, especially tripod headstand. It's not controlled. It's not a safe way to get up. We're going to do it really slow, and it might be a little bit more annoying, but I promise it's much safer and much more controlled. Okay? So let's come into it together. Feel free, actually, if you just want to watch me do it first and then pause the video and try yourself, that might help. So what I'm going to do here is place my forearms down, and I'm just going to make sure that they're shoulder width, okay? So they're not flaring out towards the side. I'm able to grab my biceps. Then I'm going to interlace my hands, my fingers, and I'm going to release my pinkies. Then I'm going to nestle my head so that it meets the heels of my hands and hug my elbows in. Now, the other thing you want to watch out for is that your shoulders don't creep up alongside your ears. You want to go poof. Make that sound, please. Poof. And push your forearms down and feel all of this, your lats, your armpits really starting to engage. Okay? So, sorry, I just need to fix my mic there. So press down into your forearms. Engage those beautiful back muscles. Then the next stage is to tuck your toes under and lift your hips up. You'll want to walk your feet as close as your hamstrings will allow to bring your hips over top of your shoulders. If your knees are really bent and your hips are way back here, you've got further to travel. It's going to be more difficult. So you want to have your hips as close over your shoulders as you can. Then you're just going to hug one knee in towards your chest. It's not up here. It's into your chest. Okay, and then you can just play with doing that one at a time. If you want to go further, hug one knee in, bring the other knee in. This is where you're going to need a lot of core control. Stack your hips, over top of your shoulders, and then go ahead and straighten out your legs. Squeeze your inner thighs towards one another, point your toes up towards the sky, and ever so slightly squeeze your bum. Push your forearms down, hug your elbows in, and just make sure that you don't have too much weight on your forehead there. To exit, just lower one foot down at a time and take child's pose. Okay. I'm going to show you tripod next. For me, I'm going to show you 3 different entry points into tripod. For me, the easiest is to get to it from crow. So I'm going to show you that first, and then I'll show you other ways to get into it. Again, if you're going to do this with me, you would place yourself right up against the wall, okay? So when we do tripod, think of a tripod. You want a triangle shape. So you got your 2 hands shoulder width, spreading your fingers nice and wide, and then your head, the crown of your head is going to make the top of that triangle. What I see happen often is people who put their head right in the center of the hands. That's not going to be great for balance. You really do want to think of that triangle shape, okay? So if you're doing this up against the wall, you're going to be about maybe a foot or 2 away from the wall, and your head's going to be nice and close towards the wall, okay? Feel free to watch me first, and again, you can pause the video and try at your own time afterwards if you like. So again, I'm going to do this first one here. I'm going to approach it from crow pose. So what you'll do is plant your hands down, and I'm going to decide ahead of time where my head is going to go. So I've got a little spot on the mat here where that's going to be my goal. I want the crown of my head to be at the top of that triangle there. So I'm going to plant my hands down, lift my knees up nice and high. The higher your hips are, the more you're already moving into that shape. So if you do crow pose with your hips down and way back, it's going to be harder to get it over, right? So spread your fingers wide, weight is to the inner edges of your hands. Place your knees up nice and high on your arms. I'm still looking at that speck. I'm going to look at where I'm going to go, and I'm going to control the descent down onto the crown of my head. From here, you can stay here if you want, or you can hug your knees in towards your chest, wrap your elbows in, stack hips over top of shoulders, and reach your legs up towards the sky. Squeeze your bum, squeeze inner thighs. Okay, if you want to, you can lower down back into what I call a teddy bear stand. I learned that in school. Or come all the way down, so whatever you want, and then maybe press back up into your crow pose. Okay, so that's one entry point. The other entry point, there's probably many, but the ones that I'm going to show you today, I find a little bit harder because, as I said, with crow pose, you're already kind of like halfway there in a sense, right? Your legs are already up on your upper arms and your hips already lifted high. But if that doesn't work for you, you can try it this way. So I'm going to kind of map out again the top of the triangle, plant my hands down. Remember, you want to make sure your elbows don't flare out towards the side. You're hugging them in, wrapping in. So I'm going to look at where I'm going to go. There's the top of my triangle there, and I'll place the crown of my head down. Then from here, lift up and come into that teddy bear stand. Okay, then from here, hug the knees in. Whoop. Press the legs up. See, I'm not so good at getting into it from this point, but hopefully you can get the idea of what I was going for there. So you can try it from that position. The last position, you'll see this quite often actually, is from Prasarita Padottanasana, or standing wide-legged forward fold. So let me just show you the shape. That'll be like this. And then your hands will be shoulder width. Your head will come down to the ground. Now, as you can see for me, I'm quite far from the ground. So there's too much of a gap there for me to come into it from here. If you have lovely long hamstrings, what you would do is be in that position, bring your head all the way down first. So you're still in that same position. All your limbs are on the ground. Your head comes down. Your legs stay nice and wide, and then you'll tilt your pelvis so you can come up. If you're in the tight hamstring club, stay with me. I'll be in that wide-legged forward fold, but then I'm going to do a little sneaky crow pose so that I can bend my knees. Then I'm going to come up into tripod. Okay, so check this out. So be in the wide-legged forward fold. Hands are planting, shoulder width. Now, again, I can't get all the way down. So what I'm going to do is just bend my knees, come into that sneaky crow pose. Head comes down. I'm going to keep my legs nice and wide as I press into my tripod. Okay, and then slowly come on down, back into your wide-legged forward fold. All right, so there you go. Hopefully you will have little successes, even if that means just lifting one foot off of the ground at a time. As I said, start off against the wall, but just make sure you don't spend too much time at the wall as you're practicing this. Make sure you do get comfortable and confident, but you don't want to build up a complex. You don't want to, this is what I did. This was one of my mistakes with handstand, is I spent years getting into handstand at the wall, and I could do it no problem because I had that safety there. And then as soon as I started doing it away from the mat, it was like starting from scratch, really. So you want to make sure that you don't do that. Please learn from my mistakes. Hopefully that was helpful. And when I see you next time, we're going to be bringing that into a flow. So practice this a few times, and then I'll see you for next class, and we'll see how your headstand is going. Thanks so much for your time. I'll see you soon.